who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Hey, Eldorados, Larry Elder here. Welcome to another edition of And Another Thing. This is episode number 20. Can you believe it? If you want to become an Eldorado, go to LarryElder.com, fill out the form. You're going to get a free copy of my award-winning DVD called Michael and Me, which is a feature-length documentary about the Second Amendment. And I confront the esteemed director, Michael Moore, and I ask him 3 times how many Americans use guns to defend themselves every year. And 3 times, well, you have to get the DVD to find out how he answers it, okay? I want to talk briefly today about the movie I just now saw day before yesterday called 42. And by the way, let me apologize in advance for my voice. I gave a speech this morning before a group of Brandeis University supporters, and then doing this, and then I'm going to do my regular radio show, which lasts 3 hours in just a few minutes. So the voice is a little rough right now. But I saw the movie 42 at the Chinese Theater here in Hollywood, and I was invited by a friend of mine who didn't know that much about Jackie Robinson. She's a writer. And she was asked to write a story about him before she had seen the movie. So she calls me. She's one of those people who's sports challenged and doesn't know anything about sports. So she called me and she said, "What can you tell me about Jackie Robinson?" I said, "How much time do you have?" He was a hero. I told her he was a real hero. And I said, and I hope they finally get it right with this movie called 42. I've seen a lot of movies about Jackie Robinson, excerpts, or movies where he was a character like Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars and Motor King. That was a movie done by Motown some years ago starring Billy D. Williams. One of the characters there was Jackie Robinson. And I've seen a number of movies where Jackie Robinson was either the featured person or was a character in another person's movie. And I've always felt that he seemed diminished, considering the gravity of what he did, the epic dimensions of his feats, the pressure he was under. Think about this. Imagine another sports guy under as much pressure as Jackie Robinson. He was the guy who broke the Major League color barrier in 1947. There were no blacks playing the so-called modern major leagues. Everybody was looking at him. And in those days, you're talking about maybe 3 major sports in the country: baseball, horse racing, and boxing. That was it. Football wasn't even that big in those days. So you're talking about a guy on whom the eyes of America set. And at least half of America wanted him to fail. And you're talking about a character who would be taunted the N-word from the stands, fellow players, even managers, opposing managers would call him the N-word and say all sorts of things publicly out loud while he was trying to bat. Comments about his wife, comments about where he came from, comments about his father. I mean, can you imagine the most vile, vicious, nasty stuff said at you while you're concentrating on trying to avoid being hit by a pitch thrown at 90 miles an hour? And players were spiking at him and throwing at his head. And by the way, I told my friend, he was a 4-sport star at UCLA: track, football, baseball, and basketball. And baseball was his worst sport. He was 28 years old or so when he was brought up by Branch Rickey. And there is a sort of assumption or myth that Jackie Robinson was this kiss-ass passive guy who just let insults roll off him, and that's why Branch Rickey, the head of the Dodgers, selected him. It turns out that's not true at all. He was a very proud man. He had a vicious temper. He was indignant when he saw wrong, and he wanted to do something about it. He was in the Army before going into baseball, and he was actually court-martialed. Why? He refused to give up his seat because he sat at the wrong place on a bus. The military base where he worked had just integrated, and you could sit anywhere you wanted on a bus. And so Jackie Robinson sat apparently in an improper section. The bus driver told him to move. He refused. The bus driver called his commanding officer. The commanding officer refused to tell Jackie Robinson to move. Both the commanding officer and Jackie Robinson were court-martialed and stood trial. Hello. They were both found not guilty. My point in telling you that story is to tell you that this guy was not some sort of passive person who did not try to right the wrongs. He hated racism, he hated bigotry, and he spoke out against it. For 2 years, he was asked by Branch Rickey to say nothing, to put up with the taunts, because the feeling was this is the first black guy in Major League Baseball. If he blows up, if he attacks, if he appears to be offended, it could conceivably prevent more blacks from coming into the major leagues for years and years on the BS notion that they should have been better behaved. In any case, he did not expose his temper for almost 2 years. The third year, Branch Rickey took off the brakes, and he could go out and say what he wanted, and often did. He was a hellacious trash talker. But my point is, the movie was epic. 42. I was not all that optimistic. I got to tell you, I really felt that they were probably going to make him some sort of one-dimensional caricature, but they didn't. They showed him, I thought, in all of his dimensions. He was a loving father, a loving husband, had an extraordinarily dedicated wife who had his back, and vice versa. And it showed where he had to room because he was black, that his teammates didn't fully accept him, but some did, including Pee Wee Reese, who famously put his arm around Jackie Robinson in front of everybody, one of the most famous photos you've ever seen in baseball, to let everybody know that, as far as I'm concerned, he's my teammate, and I care about whether or not somebody can help us win, not the color of their skin, said Pee Wee Reese, and that kind of helped change the whole atmosphere in baseball. And these women who engage in BMW, that stands for bitch, moan, and whine about the glass ceiling, I don't have a whole lot of patience for them, and I know a lot of my female friends don't either. Thank you very much for that, and let's take a few of your questions. Thank you, sir. Rosalie from Whittier, California. Larry, love you and love the show. Thank you. You cover a myriad of topics. I try and keep it interesting so you don't get bored, so I don't get bored. My question to you is this: are there certain subjects of politics and life that you are constantly thinking about and analyzing? Rose, let me tell you something. When I first started radio, somebody said to me, Larry, you're never going to listen to radio the same way again. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, after you are in it, now when you listen to radio, you're going to be listening to radio as a radio host, as somebody who's constantly looking for materials, constantly looking for things to say, to talk about, to react to. He said, for good or for ill, from now on, you will never approach radio, television, even picking up a newspaper the same way again. And I don't. That's my long way of saying, Rosalie, I don't shut it off. It's 24/7. I think even when I'm dreaming, I'm thinking about what I'm doing. People have often said to me, Larry, you're so bright. You can respond well to so many things. It's because I'm working on it all the time. You know how Kobe Bryant is known for showing up late, showing up early and leaving late in the gym? Well, that's what I try and do. I try to read constantly, reread, relearn, rethink, reanalyze, re-explore, figure out better ways of making the argument, more concise ways, more persuasive ways. That's what I'm doing all the time. What I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in El Dorado. Go to my website, larryelder.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.